Davante Adams, is this a cry for help? Do you want out of Las Vegas that bad that you requested a trade? I understand. The Raiders suck, and let's figure out where he's going to go. Adams officially requested a trade today from the Las Vegas Raiders, and he's tired of wearing that silver and white. He's the Raiders really haven't put him in a position since he's been there, honestly, to win. Jimmy G, wasn't great, couldn't throw him the ball, missed him multiple times. Now they have Gardner Minshew, who's not anything crazy, but he'll get the job done if you have a good enough team around him. But he's not that good of a quarterback. I mean, we can agree as being Colts fans, he was in a good situation last year, filling in for Anthony Richardson, but he's not a guy that's going to be an elite quarterback that's going to get Davante Adams the ball. And so, the Raiders are also looking to deal him. They've expressed interest today. I'm sure you all have seen lots of reports from ESPN, Bleacher Report, etc. Lots of people, believe that the Raiders are really wanting to get this deal done.
Mm-hmm.
They are asking for a second-round pick and additional compensation for him, which he is an older wide receiver. You can decide if you believe he's worth a second-round pick at this point in his career. But, I mean, he's an elite wide receiver, and I think both of us can agree with that. So
yeah, I think they're in a really good position as far as Davante Adams as a player. He's obviously, like you said, he's a veteran. Yeah. He's kind of getting on up there in age. However, he's still arguably, he may not be as good as he was in his prime. However, he hasn't regressed very much at all. I think a lot of his issues have been poor quarterback play, and you've seen that in his reactions on the sidelines and just the reports that have come out. So I think if you're a win-now team, and we're going to go through some of those here in just a minute, if you're a win-now team, this is like the perfect opportunity for you to snag a wide receiver if you're in desperate need. And for the Raiders, you're in a great position as well because some of the teams on this list are teams that are within your division. Which that would get you probably more than what you're asking. So
they're gonna have to pay a steep price
for sure.
If they want to trade for him. But
so I think they're in a great position.
Yeah.
They're in a great position overall, and I think they'd be able to get some pretty good compensation from one of these teams. So if you want to go ahead and hop right into it.
Yeah, I agree. Like we said, there's people in their division. that the Chiefs, Chargers. Two teams that very well could use a wide receiver one right now. The Chargers, since they lost Keenan Allen, Mike Williams, they really don't have anybody that's that elite wide receiver one. They have Ladd McConkey that they just drafted. He's been good, but, to have a true wide receiver one that's truly elite like Davante Adams to pair with Justin Herbert, I think that would be very good. But, talking about that, what Grant just said, they're in the same division. And so that second-round pick, I mean, yeah, that might be steep for some teams, but for the Chargers, they're going to have to pay a second-round pick and then maybe like another third-round pick, or even just like a solid young player. They're going to have to add some other stuff that's intriguing because why would the Raiders want to make the Chargers any better, being in the same division?
And I kind of think for the Chargers, you've got to think some of these teams that we go through, they're going to be win-now teams.
Mm-hmm.
They're going to be in desperate need for a wide receiver, and it's going to benefit them and Davante Adams because they have a chance at the Super Bowl. Well, the Chargers don't. Let's be completely honest. The Chargers, with Justin Herbert and his injury history and him currently being injured and still playing through it, and not having a true wide receiver one, their defense is not very good either. All around, they're not a Super Bowl contender right now.
I think they'll be a playoff team, but... Well, I definitely think they'll make the wild card.
Yeah.
For sure. But I do agree, like, they're not a true Super Bowl contender right now. And so their dire need to go out and get Davante Adams might not be there yet. But I think if Davante Adams isn't traded within the next couple of weeks and this lingers on and they end up finding themselves in a good position, where they're really close with the Chiefs in that division towards the top, I think they could make a splash and try to go get them. But
I think it just depends a lot on their situation in the upcoming weeks. If, like you said, they do become a contender, then yeah, go for it. But if you're truly focused on the future, which I feel like they are with the Ladd McConkey, the Quentin Johnson, with those two wide receivers both being young, I think that you just have to prepare for the future, and you can't bite too hard on the bullet now and try to take a veteran wide receiver. So, So the next team we can kind of look at though is the Kansas City Chiefs. They are more of a win now team. Of course, when you have Patrick Mahomes as your quarterback, you're almost always a win now team. And obviously, we just saw the news of Rashee Rice. Still don't know the full extent of the injury because test results are still coming back. However, it is feared that he has a torn ACL, which would end his season. And with that being said, you have Xavier Worthy, who's just a rookie. I wouldn't quite throw him in that wide receiver 1 role just yet. I believe you still got Juju Smith-Schuster on the roster.
Yeah, he's on there. But he's proved, not no wide receiver 1.
He's proved
maybe
that
a
he
wide receiver 3
right.
at most.
Yep.
He's not elite. But yeah, I agree. I think the Chiefs, I think they're probably the most exciting team if they could get Davante Adams.
Oh, for sure.
They want to go for that three-peat this year and, be the first NFL team really to do that. So I think also what we didn't mention yet, but is Travis Kelce's situation. He's 34 and he's getting older. This could be his last season. And so, with Kelce, Kelce, I think the Chiefs understand this. Andy Reid knows this. Their whole upper management, ownership, everybody knows this, that this dynasty could be coming close to an end. Yeah, they're going to win probably more championships because they have Mahomes, but, the dynasty with Kelce, that's going to end probably this year or next year, so.
Yeah. I think big changes are coming to the Chiefs. I think if they want to try to win it this year, go for, I believe it'd be the three-peat, correct?
Yep.
Go for the three-peat. If they want to do that, then I think Davante Adams probably wouldn't be a bad move, especially if Rashee Rice is out all year. Like you said, Travis Kelce finally had a good game this past week, which I was happy to see that. But yeah, he is getting older. He's got other priorities off the field as well that he may tend to over football. And so just don't know how much longer that's going to go on. So it would be cool to see them take Davante Adams, see if they can get one more this last year. And obviously they'll still have Mahomes. So they'll be contenders for a while to come, but maybe not to the fullest extent without Travis Kelce. So
yeah, I agree. So those two teams, like we said, being in the same division, it's just going to be tough for them to pry, Davante Adams from the Raiders. Being in the same division, that's just a tough ask. They're not really going to want to have to deal him to a division rival. So if that price is steep enough and the Chiefs or Chargers are willing to pay it, I would probably lean more towards the Chiefs being willing to pay it if Rashee Rice is out the entire year. But nonetheless, they might have to pay more of a premium. But yeah, I think those are the two teams from that division that you could definitely see being a landing spot for Davante Adams. And then
for sure,
we can kind of move on, kind of talk about some teams that really have a desperate need right now for a wide receiver 1. And with that being said, the Chargers, we've kind of mentioned this, but they don't really have necessarily a wide receiver 1 right now. And so they definitely fall into this category and could be somebody that could be on the market for a wide receiver 1. But for the reasons we've discussed, I don't know necessarily if they're one of my top 3 or top 5 landing spots just because of their situation. But also the Chiefs right now, they could be looking for a wide receiver 1 with Rashee Rice possibly being out for the whole year. So that's 2 teams, and then you can kind of discuss some more that you kind of.
So we can move on to the Pittsburgh Steelers. They've obviously got George Pickens. They have Justin Fields as QB right now. I think it'll probably stay that way because they're doing really well right now with Justin Fields off to a 3-1 start. I don't think there'd be any reason to throw Russell Wilson back out there. Not when Justin Fields is playing as well as he is, especially in the second half against the Colts. Yes, they lost, but the second half he was phenomenal. And so if he keeps playing like that, I think he'll stay their starter. With that being said, they have George Pickens, but that's about it. I wouldn't say anybody else on that team is an elite wide receiver. I think pairing Davante Adams up with that Steelers team would put them in a good position to continue winning the games that they have this year, and would kind of help them succeed. I think they're easily a playoff team right now. I think this could give them that slight boost to maybe help them go a little bit further. Maybe not the Super Bowl, but I think it would get them maybe a round or two further than they would have gotten. So.
Yeah, I agree. I think the Steelers have a top 3 defense in the league right now. Having T.J. Watt is going to do wonders for your team. He's so good. And so having him definitely boosts their chances every year, to be a good team. But, I can agree with you. I don't necessarily know if George Pickens is a wide receiver 1 right now. He hasn't had a 1,000-yard receiving season since he's came into the NFL, which I know he's still super young. But and also you can say his quarterbacks haven't been great. But I do think Justin Fields, he might not be an elite quarterback, but he's a solid quarterback nonetheless. Right now with the way he's been playing, they've been kind of making it easy on him. Mike Tomlin's done a good job of putting him in a good situation to win games, and so with them, having a winning record right now and looking like they're going to make the playoffs, they could make a splash for Davante Adams.
For sure. I think with that, we can move on to the Baltimore Ravens and kind of be our next team that we would look at. Mark Andrews has been non-existent this year. I've had him in fantasy football. I've been disappointed 2 weeks. I've really been disappointed 4 weeks in a row.
Back-to-back weeks of 0.
Yes, back-to-back weeks of 0. It's been killer. But even if you look at their wide receiver room, there's nobody that really stands out. You've got Zay Flowers. That's about it. Mm-hmm. Nobody else really on that roster is going to be a true wide receiver 1. And I think if the Ravens are looking to make a push for the Super Bowl this year, which, again, you've always got a small chance with Lamar Jackson as your quarterback. Mm-hmm. They've got Derrick Henry, who's old and whose window is closing fairly quickly. I think he's pretty solid this year, but he didn't have too many more years left in him. And so I think if you just look at that team overall, I think Davante Adams would be a good fit. He'd help Lamar Jackson tremendously, maybe even open up the middle for Mark Andrews, and maybe you'd see that offense thrive a little bit more than it is right now.
Yeah, I agree. I think the Ravens could be a little sneaky team to hop on in there and try to snag Davante Adams. Zay Flowers definitely isn't a bad wide receiver by any means, but he's kind of similar to Pickens. I don't think Pickens and Flowers are necessarily elite right now. I think they're kind of like Devonta Smiths from the Eagles, like elite wide receiver 2s, borderline wide receiver 1s, but I think getting Davante Adams in there would do wonders for the Ravens, especially since they're a win-now team. But
for sure.
Also the Bills, I think
Buffalo Bills.
They definitely could use a wide receiver 1. You have arguably one of the top 5 best quarterbacks in the NFL with Josh Allen for the Buffalo Bills. So, having him and getting him a weapon like Davante Adams, could be great for the Bills. But, also the Bills, they have, they've kind of changed their roster and reconstructed kind of how they built this roster from about 5 years back. They got rid of Diggs. They kind of built more up on their defense, kind of emphasized their defense a little bit more, kind of have established themselves as more of a run team, but also using, Josh Allen's legs and his ability to scramble out of the pocket and find guys deep down the field. And so, the Bills definitely could use a wide receiver 1, and I think, they're a very competitive team this year and could be in a win-now mode. And so I think that, maybe we see the Bills, go and make a splash for Davante Adams.
For sure. I think so far this year they have Matt Collins, and then they've got Khalil Shakir, who have really been their 2 main guys that they've used this year. Neither one of those, I wouldn't even say that they're elite wide receiver 2s. I would say they're solid wide receiver 2s. I wouldn't say either one of them is even remotely close to the wide receiver 1 category. And like I said, I don't even know if I'd put them as an elite wide receiver 2. So Josh Allen's been able to make it work because he's Josh Allen. He's proved this year that he is the guy that we thought he was. He can succeed without Stephon Diggs, and he's proven that this year, and they've done really well. So I think the addition of Davante Adams, if you're going for the Super Bowl this year, which granted Von Miller just got suspended 4 games, in the long run, I think this is a team that can make the playoffs and that can probably go pretty far. And the addition of Davante Adams would probably help them quite a bit. So
I agree.
I think it'd definitely be a team to watch out for in the future. So now we can kind of move on to the teams that are kind of in win now mode. We've kind of talked about those a little bit. We mentioned the Chiefs. We mentioned maybe the Bills, maybe even the Ravens a little bit, but the Cowboys as well. Cowboys are on that list as well, which you think about their team. They've already got a wide receiver one in CeeDee Lamb. He's kind of struggled this year. He's had a rough start. They've truly started utilizing him last week. You could tell that after he had made some comments that the Cowboys were pretty adamant about getting him more touches. They had a few design runs for him. They had some plays that were specifically targeted for him, which was great. I'm glad they're finally doing that. However, outside of him, I don't feel like they have true wide receiver 2 help. So it's kind of hard for him to kind of take on the load by himself. I think Davante Adams really helped Dak out. And this is a team that defensively they're really struggling right now. We've got a new defensive coordinator, and they're just kind of struggling to stop points going on the board for the other team. And so I think you're going to have a really good offense in order to kind of counter that. And so I think Adams would be a pretty good fit there. Is it very likely? Probably not. But I think it's a possibility.
Yeah, I agree with Jerry Jones. He's always willing to spend money or go make a splash. And so, maybe, they have Dak and they just sign him to his massive contract. They signed CeeDee Lamb to his massive contract. And they're like, well, we also have Micah Parsons, who did get hurt last week, but he seems like it's not going to be anything too long. And so, their defense has been pretty mid, to be honest with you. It hasn't been great. But if their defense can find anything like how they were the previous 2 years and just get up to that top 10 kind of defensive threshold and be one of those kind of good to elite defenses in the NFL, like I believe they can be, this offense would be absolutely elite with Davante Adams. And so I think that would take the pressure off of CeeDee Lamb. And so when he gets doubled, it's just going to be a field day for Davante Adams, and he's gonna go off. So I think I totally agree. We've talked about the Ravens, Chiefs, Bills as we're now teams, true Super Bowl possible contenders this year. And so I think the Cowboys, kind of they haven't been great this season, but I think getting Davante Adams would feel a definite need for this team. And so, yeah,
for sure. I think next we can move on to. We'll kind of hit at the very end, maybe him reuniting with potential teams, players that he's played with in the past. But real quick, we can just hit the kind of outlier here from every other team that we'll look at. It's the Washington Commanders. And the reason I wanted to hit them first is because Jaden Daniels has looked really good this year. Mm-hmm. He's by far looked like the best rookie, in my opinion. He just set the record for highest completion percentage for a rookie in a game. To where he threw like 91% completion percentage, which was really good. Love seeing that game for him. Love seeing him succeed. And it wasn't just a one-game thing. He turned around and had another great game after that. He had 2 games that were great before that. So he's definitely on the right path. Definitely love to see that. I think with Terry McLaurin, it would be nice to relieve him a little bit and maybe give somebody else some touches. Of course, Jane Daniels done a good job of A, running the ball, and B, spreading out the targets. But I think having Davante Adams would definitely... I think this team is already a playoff team. I'm a little higher on them than probably some people are. But I think this team could even have a shot at maybe not the Super Bowl, but maybe right before it. Maybe the semifinal, quarterfinal. I don't know how far they could go.
Take.
But I do think Daniels has been really good this year. And if he can keep playing the way that he's playing, they're blowing out teams right now. Teams that they shouldn't. They're playing with the Bengals, who some would argue when they're at their best are an elite team. And so that's just kind of my take on the Commanders.
Yeah, I think the Commanders, they're young and intriguing. Jay Daniels has been, this might be one of the most impressive, rookie quarterback showings we've seen over a 4-game span since, stats have been tracked in the NFL. So he's been very, very good. He's been smart with the football. He's been using his legs. He's just been a very good quarterback. Definitely, I think he's over Caleb Williams in my eyes right now. Of kind of like what Grant was saying, that I think he will win. offensive rookie of the year. He's been very good, and so I agree. I think getting Davante Adams, would add to his wide receiver room. Obviously, they lost Jahan Dotson and Curtis Samuel. They don't have them anymore, but they still do have Scary Terry. But to have Scary Terry and Davante Adams would be very cool. I kind of disagree with you in terms of them going to the Super Bowl. I don't think that's going to happen. I do think, though, that they're probably going to win their division.
Yeah.
Based on how good they've been. But the one thing that kind of scares me a little bit is I do think that their defense is just not there yet. I don't think their defense is very good. They give up a lot of yards to wide receivers, and I think their secondary is just not there yet to be a team that could really compete for a Super Bowl. But I do think that they will be a playoff team, and I think they're an exciting team to monitor. I think if they got Davante Adams pairing with a rookie quarterback and Jane Daniels, who's looked really good, that could put people kind of tune into the TV to watch the Commanders.
For sure. I definitely agree. I think it'd be a long shot for them to make the Super Bowl. A lot of things would have to go their way. Probably have to have some help from the refs, too, if at all possible. But, it's a team to watch, for sure. They've been in talks with Davante Adams. I don't know if the Commanders have themselves, but there's a connection between the two that I'm sure could be made, and it would work out for them. So, with that being said, we can get into the last part. We've got two teams here that both would kind of be Davante Adams reuniting with somebody or some team that he was with. The first we can start off is Aaron Rodgers and the New York Jets. I think that's a team that they've got Garrett Wilson, they've got Allen Lazard, who are both clicking right now. Garrett Wilson could look better. I think Aaron Rodgers may be struggling a little bit. And obviously their wide receiver core could use a Davante Adams. I think this is, in my opinion, one of the lesser likely outcomes to happen out of all of these teams, just because their wide receiver room is pretty good. They have a phenomenal defense.
They got Mike Williams, too.
They've got Mike Williams, who has actually looked pretty good last week, coming back from injury. They're slowly working him back to where he can play some more. And so I don't necessarily know if they would go out and do that. However, they do have a really good team right now. So they could go ahead and throw some picks out there and say, hey, I think we've got a chance to win the Super Bowl this year, so let's do it. I
agree. I think this is probably Aaron Rodgers' last season. Maybe he sneaks in, plays one more next year. I doubt it, but nonetheless, we know that Aaron Rodgers and Davante Adams have been elite in their career,
for sure.
And where they did that at was in Green Bay, and so that's the kind of last team. Maybe Davante Adams, he decides, and the Packers decide that let's reunite, let's give Jordan Love another target, and the Packers have a lot of good wide receiver 2s to a wide receiver 1 as wide receivers, and so I think that they definitely have the picks, the second round picks that the Raiders have been looking for, but they also have some wide receivers that they could throw in there. So maybe it's a deal where it's like a second round pick and you give up Christian Watson or you give up Wicks, or I don't think they're going to give up Jaden Reed because I think he is their wide receiver 1. He's been elite, but I do think if the Raiders could go and get a second round pick and one of those kind of Romeo Dobbs, even maybe like one of those wide receiver 2, wide receiver 3 type of players that maybe they can blossom with the Raiders and become a solidified wide receiver 2 there. So I don't know. I think the Packers would be interesting to see him come back to his old team.
For sure. I think he definitely could look at the team now, and of course Jordan Love, whenever he was first taking over, there's a lot of concern, especially from a wide receiver standpoint, whenever you're getting a new quarterback. Of just knowing that you're going to have the new guy that's got to learn. He's going to take a year or two at least. In most cases, in a majority of cases, he's going to take a year to 2, maybe even 3 to 4 years to truly learn the position, and I think Jordan Love is starting to do that. But I think at the time, and Davante Adams knowing that was going to happen soon with Rodgers leaving, I just think that it'd be a good fit for Adams at this point because Love has started to develop and he is developing still. I think, like you said, they don't necessarily have a true wide receiver 1. I wouldn't call any of their wide receivers elite wide receiver 1s right now.
I think Reed's close. He's
may
been
be
very,
close.
very good.
He has been pretty good this year.
But I don't think he's there quite yet. And Davante Adams would definitely
For sure.
help. And they're going to be a playoff team, so.
For sure. I think that they'll sneak into the playoffs pretty easily.
Mm-hmm.
And I think as long as Jordan Love stays healthy, obviously he's had issues with that this year so far. He did get back a lot quicker than I thought he would. But again, they are pretty wide receiver heavy. They have a very solid wide receiver room. You saw Wicks kind of go crazy last week. He had a really good week. Christian Watson, when he's healthy, is phenomenal. Jaden Reed is phenomenal. And so I just think overall they already have a pretty good receiver room. I don't know if they'd want to make too many changes to it.
Mm-hmm.
But if they were looking to add just another one of those guys, maybe get rid of one of their better wide receivers and obviously some picks, then, I mean, you could do that. They've got the option to. So
yeah, definitely.
For sure.
So these are kind of some teams, that could be on the radar to, snag Davante Adams. My advice is that if I had to guess, he's probably going to get dealt after this upcoming week. I think it's not going to be – most of the time wide receivers don't get traded super early into a season. But, we could start expecting, a trade to go down, this upcoming week before, maybe a game. I don't know. What do you think on when this deal could get done?
I don't know. I would say probably within the next 3 weeks. I would say be looking for it. Honestly, we could be wrong on all these teams too. There could be a team that sneaks in and decides to take them that wasn't on our radar at all, and that happens every now and then. So we'll just kind of see within the next few weeks. I doubt it would happen too late into the season. I think Davante Adams is kind of ready to get out. However, if you're the Raiders, there's really no rush. I mean, you're not planning on winning the Super Bowl this year. I mean, it's kind of
hold them and get as much assets as you can out of a team. Just hold them and hope you can drain them for everything that they'll give you. But,
and maybe that's what you do. You wait until close to the end of the year whenever that trade deadline hits and teams are more solidified on whether they're going to win now or they're going to prepare for next year. And maybe you see a trade then. So you never know, I guess.
I do think it's kind of mutual between the Raiders and Davante Adams, and so maybe they'll look to kind of make a deal a little bit sooner because both sides are kind of wanting to kind of move on, and I think Davante Adams, him being a respected veteran in the NFL, he kind of gets a little bit of a say, and the Raiders, they might want to milk a team for all they've got and get all the assets that they can. But, if Davante Adams really wants out and he's going to sit out and not play for the Raiders this year until he gets dealt, well, then that could just make it to where the Raiders are more likely to trade him sooner than later. But, these are the teams we think that, you could see Davante Adams end up on before the end of the season. And so y'all let us know how y'all.
Let us know your thoughts in the comments.
Yeah, let us know. I think there are definitely, like Grant was saying, there's definitely some dark horses that come out of nowhere. But I would love to say that one of these teams that we picked, will be one of those teams that end up landing him. But we'll definitely have to wait and see. But nonetheless, I hope you all enjoyed this video, and we're excited to see where Davante Adams lands.
We'll see you all next week.